Okay, I hope you can hear me. There we go. That's better. Right, welcome to our next episode. There we go. Welcome to episode 16 of Teacher Talking Time, and thank you to everybody joining us today. Don't forget to post your questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. My name is Martin, and if you're new here, I post weekly live streams on YouTube. And it's mainly geared for English language teachers or online teachers, for that matter, of any subject or that sort of thing. So if you have any questions whatsoever, I'll be happy to answer them, and also invite others to suggest their ideas and thoughts with regards to online teaching or questions and that sort of thing. So we have a couple of people that are joining us. We have the regulars that are joining us. I can see a few. So we've got Victor here. So nice to have Victor. So he says hello, and nice to welcome you back, Victor. I hope everything's well. We have Eugene here who says hello. Nice to have you back, Eugene. I think you might be new. I'm not entirely sure. But welcome anyway. It's great to have you. So any questions that you have in terms of online teaching or anything else like that, that would be great. Now, bear with me. The sun is surprisingly bright today in the UK, and I'll be just drawing the blind a little bit because it's starting to blind me a bit, and you can see it's rather bright. So just bear with me one moment whilst I draw the blind, and I'm not going to go too far away, so bear with me. That's better. Another blind. There we go. There we are. Right, back. Not so bright now. That's great. So, any questions that you have with regards to teaching English or language education? It would be great to have your questions on board. But I thought what I would do today is to start off about trying to get students to communicate whilst you're teaching them online. Now, the difficulty of teaching remotely is trying to get students to communicate effectively in English and using the English appropriately within an online environment. Now, we do have the difficulty of having that remoteness from the students, and the students feeling that remoteness as well online. So we need to try and set up tasks when it comes down to getting them to speak and communicate in the language that they're learning. So for example, for me, when I'm teaching English, I prefer to use a variety of surveys and activities to get them communicating, and I tend to refer to conversation questions, particularly when it's one-to-one. I get them to answer questions, and I give them a variety of prompts, and then they answer particular questions, and then immediately after they finished answering the question, then I feed back to them about how well they've done. How well did they do with their communication, how was their pronunciation, and is there anything that they can improve upon. And that's incredibly vital, particularly when you teach them one-to-one. You need to provide them with that feedback, because if you don't, then it's going to be a bit troublesome. And I've had students that have left other private teachers or tutors to join me because their tutor really wasn't giving them much in the way of feedback or attention on what they were producing in English. So I would always urge all online English teachers and other language teachers to use and getting the students to communicate. But in terms of tasks, there are a couple of tasks that I tend to use. Instead of maybe using the whole question, I get the student to work out what the question is based on prompts. Now, in terms of this, bear with me, and I'll give you an example of what I tend to do for speaking and online English teaching. And one moment whilst I create a document, and I'll share this document with you. And I've done this in the past when it comes down to sharing what I've done. Okay, so bear with me. Here we go. Right, so you can see here that I've got a survey, and it's great for groups of students. So if you've got like 4, 5, 10, 12 students, then it's great to get them communicating and sharing their answers and then reporting back to you as the teacher. But if you have an individual student and one-to-one, and we just have these questions here, there's a different way that you could go about it. So rather than just having the questions up like this, and let me just drag these out and remove the table actually. So go down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I tend to get the questions, and a good activity is to, I'm sure there's an easy way to do this, but so here we have all questions. Okay, there. Now the questions are quite simple. You could put them into groups, like A, B, C and D, and routines. But we could change it slightly to get the students to try and work out what the question form is. So instead of using the full question forms and doing the hard work for the students, we could, in this essence, just have these questions to hand. And what I tend to do is what time you wake up. So these sort of prompts, where you come from, what you normally at the weekend, and how often you study English. And then I try and get the students to work out and create the full question. So if you've got this for the students, I say, okay, what's question 1? And they say, what time do you wake up? Okay. I go, great, well done. And then I tend to write down, what time do you wake up? And it's really trying to get the students to use the language and for them to focus on the grammar, particularly within a spoken environment. So using these prompts are great. You can go even further if you wanted. What time wake up? Where come from? What normally at the weekend? How often study English? And so the students have to work out just a little bit more. You can make it even harder if you wanted. If you've got more challenging students, and you could say, wake up, come from, do, weekend, often study English. And there you can see they have to give a bit more attention to these particular question formations, and it's really getting the students to communicate and verbalize what they can see as prompts. And then you go through the whole sort of thing of okay, this is what we're going to be looking at, and then giving them the question, they answer, and then giving them the feedback and that sort of thing. So it's rather simple in that regard. Okay, so I certainly hope that helps initially. So we're back. Right, now, are there any other type of questions that you may have with regards to speaking within an online environment? Or are there any sort of questions that you may have about other aspects of online teaching? Now, I guess what I could do is I could share a particular sort of task that I try and get students to do maybe outside of the lesson. So once they've finished, and if my sort of topic is about traveling, it's always quite nice to get students to do something related to travel outside of the lesson and getting them to complete an activity or a task or that sort of thing. So bear with me. Let me get my document back up, and this time we'll go to a new page and let me share. So when it comes down to the document, or the activity itself, let's bring that up a little bit. Oh gosh, we've got something stuck in my throat. There we go. Okay, right. When it comes down to getting the students to complete a project out of the lesson, and let's say you have the main topic is travel and holidays, and you're thinking of getting students to complete a project. The project could be related, and is usually related to the topic and the vocabulary that you've looked at during the lesson. So one thing that I like to do, particularly and I don't call it homework, I tend to call it sort of individual project work or something like that. And anyway, when it comes down to this sort of project that I'm trying to get students to complete, I go, okay, so I would go, well, plan your next holiday. Where do you go? Who do you go with? What do you see? Plan a 7-day holiday with a list of places or landmarks that you wish to visit. Include the cost of accommodation, travel, and spending money. And so it's a nice sort of project for them to do after the lesson. So when they come back, you can incorporate into the lesson the students to share what their next holiday would be, and it's a nice speaking activity for them to do once they've prepared out of the lesson. And you can go, wow, that's a fantastic, and who knows what they'll bring up with regards to this type of project. They may choose one country which is not even remotely considerable, but that's the beauty of a project like this. Travel and holidays, if it was a topic about sport, so for example, if I could type, so sports and the project, you could say, right, plan a organized activity for all students to participate. What sport do you choose? Why? When will the activity take place? And where will the sports be held? And that in itself, you go, okay, right, that's great. The students can then report back and present their ideas about a particular sport or sort of a project, and when they return back to the class. So that's another thing that I tend to do at the end of the lesson. I give them a sort of activity to do outside, and then they come back and they report back, and that's half your lesson prepared for, because you're hoping the benefit is that students will report back, and you just make a note of all the language that they've used, good language, poor language, and then give them feedback based on the vocabulary, the language, the fluency, pronunciation. And then you just need to complete something else, and it could be a sort of vocabulary review. It could be something to prepare for the next upcoming topic. But anyway, that's just another idea when it comes down to teaching and getting students to communicate. So there we are. Right. Now, are there any questions? Because I've been chatting for quite a while, and I don't seem to have any questions in the chat. It'll be great if there are some questions, teaching related, other forms, anything else. That would be great. So bear with me. And whilst we're waiting for the questions to come in, let me see what else there is in terms of speaking. Any questions? Not yet. Right. Sasha's mentioned something whilst I was flicking through Penny Ear's 100 Teaching Tips, great book. Right, so let's bring up Sasha's question. Sasha has the question. Come on, there we are. Hi everyone, I'm a newly qualified EFL teacher. Do you have any advice for speaking practice with teenage learners who are not very engaged? That's a wonderful question. So thank you ever so much for bringing that on board. Really interesting question, actually. When I put on my teenage tutor's hat, I suppose, I'm going to be trying to choose topics or themes which are going to be more engaging for the teenage students. So if you're going to be looking at news articles, it's not really going to be an interesting topic or a theme for teenage students. You need to have a look at maybe a sort of contents list of a popular teenage course book, and let me have a look. first of all. And I'll just bring up one course book. So bear with me. It's deciding to load up slowly. Oh yeah, we've got Project Explore, Life Vision, English Plus. Let's go for English Plus because I've used that before in the past. Okay, so let me see if I can share the website. So here, in terms of the course book, we have English Plus. It says look inside, so we'll have a look inside. And what does it have inside? So you can see here the different types of topics for teenage learners. I'm into that. Reading. One thing I want to get is the contents pages. Here it is. We've got the contents pages. Let's say level 3, for example. Okay, so have a look at the sort of topics and themes that are used in a course book and try to replicate that sort of theme or topic. And so here you can see fashion, one of the 5 senses. We got adventure, so sports and adventure sports, material world, so that sort of objects, possessions, etc., etc. If you have a look at the themes and the topics and you replicate that or include these in your lessons, then it will make it a bit more engaging for teenage learners. And one thing that I did do a long time ago was when I set up a teenage curriculum for a private language school, was I looked at the contents page of popular teenage English language teaching course books, and I tried to find and source material which would help teachers in that regard, delivering lessons which are more engaging for teenage learners and that sort of thing. So in terms of the theme, that could be more engaging. In terms of speaking practice, if you've got a theme or a topic that's more engaging for the learners, the teenage adolescent learners, then they're more likely to engage and contribute to discussions. And I guess when it comes down to conversations, it depends on how you go about it. So you could have a picture of the latest iPhone or the latest Samsung smartphone, and you could have a picture of that, give it to all the learners and say, find 5 reasons why you should not buy this smartphone. So it allows them to be a bit more creative, and they can be more, it helps them communicate. They have to try and find reasons not to get the latest iPhone or not to get the latest Samsung smartphone. So using these sort of strategies rather than do you have the latest iPhone? What do you think of smartphones and that sort of thing? Find 5 reasons that blah, blah, blah. Or have 2 pictures for the topic. What are the key differences between this picture and that picture? That will make it a bit more engaging, and this will get them communicating. So try to think a bit more creatively. Try to include topics which will be more engaging, and focus on the children having fun, using speaking as a tool to compete in the classroom. So speaking games are great. Back to the board, love that one. Another activity that I used with teenage learners was I gave an individual card to the student, and it had a famous person the name of a famous person on the card. They kept it secret, and then the students would have to ask some questions, like 20 questions. Are you a man or woman? Are you a man? Yes. Are you a woman? No. Or that sort of thing. And are you old? Yes or no? And that sort of thing. So try to make games and activities more engaging. Try and make it a bit more competitive, because that is the route into engaging, getting students to communicate. And they soon realise that actually they're speaking without realising it, and you haven't really done a lot, and they end up guiding and leading the lessons. I hope that helps. Right. Okay, so I have a student who says, I don't know, in response to almost any question I ask, regardless of the topic. He has a very good level of English, so I don't think it's a vocabulary or grammar issue. Okay, so if you're asking why or what do you think of, you're kind of limiting yourself to a particular answer for students to give a reason. Now, if a student doesn't want to give a reason, then there's a possibility of guiding the student in saying, to provide a reason around it, saying, what two things can you think of which would benefit this point? Or what two things do you think are not so useful in terms of this? If you have it in that regard, the student has to be a bit more creative and a bit more forthcoming. And if a student says, well, I don't really know, and you could say, well, do you need just a minute to think? And I'll ask another student and we'll come back to you if that's all right. And work around it, rather than maybe focusing too much on going, what do you think of this? I don't know. And you go, well, have a think about it, because your idea, your view is as crucial as everyone else here. And we're going to ask some other students, and if they don't know, let's try and discuss together. And try and reach a solution, try and negotiate. Maybe it's worth speaking to the student individually after the lesson, just saying, can I just have a quick word, because you tend to not have much opinion or view with regards to what we were doing today, and I'm just worried whether there's anything that you find unengaging, and is there a particular topic or area that you want to focus on in our next lesson? And if so, let me know. So you could negotiate with the student that way, I suppose. Right. Okay, so we've got Victor here. He says, I used to have English classes in college that we used to discuss polemic themes such as the death penalty. Polemic themes such as... and then he goes on, it was a little stressful, but I think, I think it worked well. These sort of debatable sort of themes are good, but I don't find them, it's a bit difficult nowadays to try and get certain opinions or certain debates and divisions between students. If there's a particular theme or a particular topic like the death penalty, you may have those that are for, pro death penalty and those against the death penalty. Now, rather than just leaving it open and seeing how students respond to it, it's quite nice sometimes to divide the class up. And I say, okay, you on this side, or virtually your group, you are going to be for the death penalty, and this group here, you're against it. You're going to work together and think of potential ideas for the death penalty or against the death penalty. And if you can work together, I'm going to give you 3 minutes, both teams, and then come back and then you're going to express your opinions, but you must disagree with each other. This was a common thing that I tried to get students to do so that they could develop the confidence to express disagreement, particularly polite disagreement. In the English classroom, this would be a wonderful opportunity for students, because the culture of English is to express disagreement politely, and I would normally give them sort of slips of paper or functional language with regards to polite disagreement, polite agreement, and changing the topic or changing the subject with regards to debates. And that seemed to work quite well. So yes, debates are great, but it depends on how you manage them, because if you just leave them to it, they may not necessarily have that debate unless you place the responsibility on this group are pro whatever and this group are anti that sort of thing. And I think that would be quite a useful exercise. Right, now Eugene says, wow, your stream is more useful than our university classes. You're welcome. Thank you ever so much. It's nice to have such a kind comment. I really appreciate it, so thank you. What else have we got here? Yep, Sasha says thank you, that's very helpful. I hope it is. I hope it does help. And then we've got Prepley saying hello. Prepley says hello. Well, welcome. Then we have Victor. Yeah, it was like this. Not necessarily we were on our real opinion side. Yeah. So yeah, having a certain deciding opinion with regards to teaching or debate rather. Right. Any other questions? Because we've spoken for about half an hour about debates and speaking activities and get the students communicating. Are there any other questions that you may have with regards to speaking, reading, that sort of thing? I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Okay. Let's go back to our main source there. So in terms of writing, there was a particular activity that I enjoyed doing both in class and out of class. And it's a sort of activity where you would give a student, okay, so in the classroom, I would give a student a piece of paper and, blank piece of paper, and I say, okay, for the first 2 minutes, I want you to introduce the story. And storytelling is quite an important aspect of any language. So storytelling, introduction, and you have to introduce the main character. So that's what I would explain to the students. So I could go, okay, 2 minutes starting now, and they would write down the key introduction. I go, stop after 2 minutes. I go, right, okay, move your piece of paper to the next student across, and you have to continue their story. And they continue the story for another 2 minutes. I say stop, right, move to the next, collect the other story, continue 2 minutes, and so on and so on. And that's the sort of thing that was quite interesting. Once the story went round the classroom and it got back to the original student, they could have a look at the entire story that was started from their initial character introduction. So that was one thing that I ended up doing with writing and teaching creative writing skills. Now we've got here James. Hi Martin, I have a student who is interested in business English. Do you have any resources, course books you could recommend? I'm currently looking at the Pearson Business Partner series. Now, yes, there was a particular course book that I would recommend, and it was related to, bear with me, I've not taught business English for a while. There are a variety of resources that I would recommend. Bear with me. Do I have it to hand here? No, it's in the other room. Holy moly, rightio. Right, so in terms of business English, right, I'm going to use Google. So bear with me. Right. I think it was related to what was it, like the Financial Times or something like that. Now, in terms of business English, a couple of things that I would recommend, and let me just get a couple of things to hand. Oh yes, that's it, Market Leader. So bear with me. And I will get everything together. So Market Leader by Pearson, brilliant course book. There's also some photocopyable material available, which I've used as well, which I really enjoy. So bear with me. Right, now I'm going to just share my website because I've got everything available and opened up, so hopefully this will work. So in terms of Pearson, there's a book called Market Leader, and it was linked to the Financial Times, so it's really good at developing the vocabulary for business, business English. And just below you can see here, Market Leader 3rd edition is a 5-level English course for students who want to learn English and learn about business. The one thing that I really like about the Market Leader course book is there's case studies included in it, and it's a great resource for students to refer to. The only thing with regards to case studies is it does get historic quite quickly. But if we have a quick look, real English in a business environment, Financial Times articles and that sort of thing, levels and samples. Let's have a look at a sample of intermediate. And let's go to the course book, a unit sample. So it's just opening up. And here you can see, if I can zoom in a little bit more, we have something about brands and brand management. And I've used this before with brands, and what I ended up doing was I started picking out the brands and using these sort of brands, getting their logos and getting students to say, okay, which logos do you know, which logos can you name, and which ones don't you know, and that sort of thing. So, and there's a sort of audio available. If I scroll out, so you have that. You have brand management. You've got a listening exercise. You've got something related to a business brand. You've got this sort of article, which is great, and reading Financial Times articles, wonderful. You've got a case study, like the case study I was mentioning already, and strategies, and then a writing task. So I find this course book, Market Leader, actually really useful. So Market Leader would be good. In terms of photocopyable resources, there is a Cambridge Business English Activities. So bear with me. Open up. Here we go. Okay, continue. Come on. Can't seem to open it up just yet. Cambridge Business English Activities. Come on. No, it's decided not to. What if I click on it? Okay, Cambridge Business English. Course book. Let's see. Can I find it? Here it is. So if we go here, I really enjoyed this book because you open it up and you can photocopy for lessons, which is great. But I suppose if you end up using this course book, then you can also scan it and use it for your online lessons if you wish. So this Cambridge Business English Activities is great. And then Cambridge what's it, Business Vocabulary in Use. There we go. So the Business Vocabulary in Use is a great book. I like this, and here it is on Amazon. So let me just get this. I've used this countless times as well. I've got a copy in my other room. So there we go. So have a look. Definitely get this one. It's really, really useful. But as a course book, I would recommend Market Leader. That's the best course book that I would suggest. So I hope that helps. Right, and then we had James saying, yeah, I think the Financial Times was linked to Market Leader. Yes, it was. We found that one out in the end. Okay, and we got Sharif. Sorry, Sharif is here, so thank you. Welcome, Sharif. It's nice to have you here. And Sharif says, thanks for your resources, Martin. I teach my students about the proper ways to write emails, business emails, presentations, etc. What is the best way to correct writing tasks? Now, before I go on to that, in terms of writing emails, business emails, presentations, the Cambridge Business English photocopyable resource book is great because it includes a variety of activities, particularly for writing. It's letter because it's quite old, it's quite historic. The resources, but you can convert it into, okay, you're going to write an email to a particular client, and what they have is they have a sort of exercise where they you could cut up the letter or email, and they have to put it in order according to what they think is correct, and that's where you can start to look at the aspects of writing in English which can help you. Okay, so what's the best way to correct the writing tasks? So going on to the writing tasks, I would always recommend, so if it's one-to-one, it's important to try and teach, to provide the feedback in the lesson with the students. So I get the students to complete the writing outside of lessons sometimes, and if they've completed the lesson, I ask them to email it to me. So I ask them to type it up, email it to me. And one thing that I enjoyed doing in a physical classroom, and which can be replicated in an online group class, is that students will email you your writing. You can take out, once it's a digital document, you can copy certain sentences and paste it in to a particular document. Now, what do I mean by this? So let me give you an example. So let's get to my Word document, and let me share the Word document. So if we've got this, and we've got student writing task, group task, and I tend to say look at the following sentences below and decide on whether they are suitable or unsuitable. For those sentences which are unsuitable, they have errors and that sort of thing, you must try to correct them. Your group will get a point for each sentence corrected and chosen appropriately. Okay, so this is what I tend to do, and what I do below is I go, right, okay, let's get a student sentence. So if I meet you tomorrow evening, I am if I meet you tomorrow evening, I was happy. Okay, something very basic. Second sentence, the meeting went well, and I would like to say thank you. So imagine you get 12 or 15 sentences, individual sentences that students have contributed. You've got all their writing to hand, and you go, okay, this is student writing. The students here have to decide, okay, sentence one, is it good or is it not good? Yeah, and if it's not good, they have to correct the sentence appropriately. Yeah. So I tend to include something like this, yeah. So this one is not good, but number 2 is good. And if they choose this one, they get 1 point, yeah. So if they decide that it's unsuitable, and it is indeed unsuitable, and there's an error in the writing, they get 1 point. And then they get another point if they can write a grammatically correct sentence. Now, if this one is good, as it is, then you get 1 point. But if you get a mistake, so for example, I was meeting my friend and my phone rang. Okay, so grammatically correct sentence. But if you go, nah, that's not good, with your students, then, but it's going to be minus 1 point. Okay, and so the group with the most amount of points at the end of this will be the winners. It's as simple as that. And this activity is used in the language and the sort of language from the students, so it requires minimal preparation, and also it requires and the students develop their awareness with their own writing and reviewing and feeding back on writing. So there's multiple purposes of this, and you can do it online and you can do it offline as well. Yeah. So that's what I would recommend when it comes down to correcting writing tasks, particularly in a group environment, I guess. You could do it individually if you have a student write an essay, 500 words, and you pull out the language and you go, okay, a combination of good and poor language use, and that would be of benefit as well. So I hope that helps Sharif with regards to the sort of writing that could be improved upon. Okay. Right, and then we've got James here who says, fantastic, thank you so much, Martin, huge help, you're very welcome. Okay, right, are there any final questions before we finish off today's live stream? It's great to have so many questions coming up, and it's wonderful to share what I tend to do and share my ideas with you, so that would be great. But if there's any additional questions with regards to writing, speaking, listening, reading, then please post in the questions. Whilst you're having a think about potential questions to ask me, feel free. I'm going to go and grab a poetry book behind me, because in a moment I'm going to be reading my poem, today's poem, and it's quite bright. I'm quite surprised at how sunny it is today, so bear with me one moment. Okay, right. I've got my poetry book, and I'm going to be using, I'm not sure if you can see that, John Keats, the major works. So that's what I'm going to be referring to, today's poem. But are there any final questions before we finish off? Right. I don't want to choose a long poem, so I'm just skipping through and trying to find a poem which may be useful. Something related to Keats' thoughts about Shakespeare. That would be interesting enough, I guess. But there's also letters included with this. Okay. I've got one poem which I think might be quite engaging, but I'm not entirely sure how to go about poetry writing within a classroom, within a language classroom, because I've never really taught poetry to my learners, either online or face to face. But definitely something for me to consider in the future. Now, one thing that I have been reading recently is Lord of the Rings, and I'm really getting into that book, and I'm getting through it, but it's a huge book and something that I will be trying to finish over the coming months. Anyway, I've got a poem here which kind of gives me the memories of Lord of the Rings, and it's a poem by Keats about God of the Golden Bow, I guess. So if there's no further questions, I'm going to read this poem by Keats about God of the Golden Bow, and we'll see how we go. So bear with me, and I'll get my poetry voice on. God of the golden bow, and of the golden lyre, and of the golden hair, and of the golden fire, charioteer round the patient year, where slept thine ire, when like a blank idiot I put on thy wreath, thy laurel, thy glory, the light of thy story? Or was I a worm too low creeping for death, O Delphic Apollo? The thunderer grasped and grasped, the thunderer frowed and frowed, the eagle's feathery mane for wrath became stiffened, the sound of breeding thunder went drowsily under, muttering to be unbound. Oh, why didst thou pity and beg for a worm? Why touch thy soft lute till the thunder was mute? Why was I not crushed, such a pitiful germ, O Delphic Apollo? The Pleiades were up, watching the silent air. The seeds and roots in earth were swelling for summer fair. The ocean, its neighbour, was at his old labour, when who did dare to tie for a moment thy plant round his brow, and grin look proudly, and blasphemy so loudly, and live for that honour to stoop for thee now, O Delphic Apollo? It's quite a nice poem, that. Right, now, Love that poem. Let's go on to final question. We've got a final question from Sharif here. How to stick to conversation lesson versus full grammar writing lesson. My students pay for conversation and expect me to improve all aspects of their English. Okay, when it comes down to my English lessons, I like to I like to separate between what they do in class, if it's online, and what they do out of class. So this is particularly important when it comes down to getting students to look at what they think an online English teacher or an English language teacher in a face-to-face classroom is expected to deliver. So let me share my website here. So here I would recommend, in class I always introduce students to what they are doing in class, and it's like speaking practice, and this is to develop fluency, improve listening skills and spoken vocabulary. In class, feedback from the teacher based on speaking. Feedback from the teacher based on writing. Okay? And that sort of thing. Conversation, practice, student to student, or student to teacher, or we could put S here, I suppose. And then I say, okay, out of class, you're going to be doing writing activities. You're going to be completing listening tasks. And we're going to be looking at grammar reviews, preparing presentations, or also what else? Preparing for exams or other things as well. So this is what I tend to tell the students. So I say, okay, in the class, particularly in an online environment, if you're teaching online, we're going to focus on speaking. We're going to focus on developing your fluency, developing your listening skills, developing your spoken vocabulary. Okay, so I guess one part could be vocabulary development. This is what they want when it comes down to speaking. I'm also going to give you feedback based on your speaking, as above. And if you say something incorrectly, I'm going to give you some feedback, and you can take that on board and develop your speaking in that way. Now, the writing that you do out of class, we're going to review that together in the class. So any writing, you need to do it out of class, because we can spend better time developing your conversation skills and your spoken vocabulary. Okay. Now, conversation practice is going to be student to student or students to students, and also students to teacher and teacher to students. So this is what I tend to do in terms of that. Now, out of class, I say, okay, you can do your writing, you can review the grammar. If there's a grammar point that it kind of arises during our conversation, yes, we'll have a look at it briefly, but I'm going to give you some homework to review the grammar, but we're not going to focus too heavily on the grammar in the class or online environment. And another thing, if I want you to prepare a task, like I was saying above, before, if there's a particular project, I want you to be planning and delivering that project in the future. So, you're going to be preparing for your presentations, you're going to be preparing for any sort of English language exams that you need to take and that sort of thing. So that's how I would divide up the time. But one thing that I would not use, or one thing that I wouldn't do, Sharif, is to go, okay, this is a full grammar lesson, we're going to look at the grammar and do the gap fill and da. No, we're not going to do that. But one thing that I would do is I would review grammar and give the students some homework, but review the grammar very, very briefly. Okay. Right. We've got EFL and Zilla. So, yep. Hi, Martin. Thanks for another TTT. Really enjoying your content. Can I study for Delta Module 1 without a course? Can you recommend somewhere to take a Delta Module 1 online? I'm not too sure. Although I do have a diploma in English language teaching, I took mine at university as part of my MA course. There are a number of Delta providers. One that comes to mind is based in Greece, and they do an online module 1. I'm not entirely sure, but bear with me whilst I tidy up my my Explorer, Google Chrome Explorer. So Delta Module 1 online course. Let's see. What was the name? Study Celta, I think it was, or Study. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure where it was. It was a good colleague of mine that runs her own Delta Centre in Athens. Here it is. I've got it now. Thanks for your patience. So I would recommend, so let's get here, CELT International Teacher Training and Development. It's run by a very, very proficient and highly experienced. You got the topics. Are you eligible to attend? Module 1, how will it be assessed? Paper 1, 50%. Paper 2, 50%. And Module 1 consists of 2 90-minute papers with a 30-minute break in between, 3 hours, 30 minutes in total. Where will you be assessed? They have their own course online, but I think you have to go and do it in person. I'm not entirely sure what the arrangement is, so that's that at the moment. So I would recommend CELT Athens as a sort of centre, and I'll give you the link in terms of this. So but essentially, in terms of the Delta, yes, you can prepare for yourself. You can prepare for the actual exam by yourself, but it's a very difficult exam. It's not easy. It's going to be, it requires a bit of preparation, and a preparation course will essentially help you. You can apply for a sort of preparation course, and then you could do the Delta exam module 1 at a place nearer to home, rather than having to fly over to Athens and do the paper there. So that you can do the preparation course online, and then do the exam somewhere closer to home, I guess. But that's my recommendation. But if you do the Delta Module 1 without any preparation course, you might find it a little bit more difficult. There are lots of resources online with regards to the Delta, and for those that are unsure, the CELTA is the initial certificate for English language teachers, whereas the Delta is not a certificate, but it's a diploma in English language teaching. And the benefit of doing a Delta is the fact that it offers more opportunities than just English language teaching. You can do a variety of things, such as getting involved with the management of a school, the curriculum, materials writing, etc. But I'm not going to go too much in that. Right, now, thank you ever so much for everybody here. Sharif says thank you. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. So I'm going to finish off today in terms of our live stream. It's been great to have so many questions coming up, so thank you ever so much. It's really, really good. Apologies about the sort of bit rate. It's kind of laggy at the moment, but anyway, I will see you. And one thing I must mention is that the live stream is going to be moved to a weekend, so it's going to be on a Saturday in the future rather than on the Monday, because I have other work commitments on during the week, Monday to Friday. Anyway, have a lovely week, and I'll give you a bit more information about the live stream and the changing of the days in the future. Have a wonderful week. Have a great time. Take care. Stay safe and happy teaching. Bye bye.